I have the honor to introduce my two guests, and they're not the least that we have. It's Patrick Fitzgibbon. He's Senior Vice President, Europe, Middle East, Africa for Hilton Hotels, and has been that for a very long time. Welcome, Patrick. Good to have you online.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Thanks. Yeah, same here. And I have Willemijn Geels, who's joining us in a minute as well. Willemijn is Vice President for IHG for Intercontinental Hotel Group, and is heading that for the European, Middle East and Africa section as well. Because it's just Europe, Willemijn.
It's just Europe, yeah, just Europe, which is already a large territory, and I'm very happy with the diversity in Europe. So thank you for having me, and good afternoon to everybody.
Good afternoon. It's interesting, these shows. Patrick sits there somewhere in the UK, and I guess Willemijn is in Paris, and I'm sitting in Rotterdam. So yes. Here we go. This just makes our business a lot easier these days. Different way of traveling. Our topic of today is what are customers looking for from a hotel, and what are the products to invest in? It's kind of a logical sequence of things, but it is important because when we look back in time, if you go back 20-25 years, there was only Hilton and there was only Holiday Inn, so to speak. And now all of a sudden, the Hilton Hotel Group and the Intercontinental Hotel Group, but also Accor and Hyatt, they have diversified enormously in brands, and they're basically offering an experience on demand. And that is largely due to a changing consumer. Travel has become much more intense than before. And Patrick, you and I have the same generation. I'm sure you remember that with your parents, you went once, maybe twice a year, you went on holiday, and now all of a sudden we have weekend breaks and we go all over the place. And it has changed enormously. And hotels like yourselves, hotel brands like yourselves have enormously expanded in that region. So how do you see this trend evolving further? Because you've already evolved so much further. Maybe Willemijn, let me start with you and be the courtesy of the charming one in our group here today to start that off.
Ladies first, right? Thank you very much, Dirk. You're very right. I think there is an evolving trend, and I think this trend will continue for more personalization and more what we would call almost like experimental or experiential travel, or call it lifestyle, or however we may define that. But definitely going by innovation and personal experience, and very often being design-led as opposed to more standardized. I think it can be declined pretty much across all segments of the spectrum, whether you talk about mid-scale, upscale, or luxury. Luxury probably lends itself even better for it, and the kind of lifestyle and design brands. So if I look within IHG and in our portfolio, we clearly have responded to that demand by acquiring brands like Kimpton, which started in the US and we're growing it globally. That's a luxury lifestyle brand. We have launched Voco, which is also it's upscale, also a bit more lifestyle, a conversion brand, one of the fastest growing brands in the industry with now 70 hotels open in pipeline. And our latest baby is Vignette Collection, which is a collection brand, obviously, entry-level luxury, and really looking for properties that seek affiliation, distribution, but that have a spirit and a DNA of their own and have something to tell, have a story to tell. And are firmly anchored in their local community, so to say. So you see that kind of personalization and those personal experience that people are really looking for, I think. And this for me is a trend definitely to stick. The other trend I really see there is people are traveling much more with purpose, right? They are looking for something, not just lying on the beach or sitting or doing a city tour. They really want to be part of something and be part of the community and do much more activities linked in with the communities as well and doing some good. So in IHG, we have Journey for Tomorrow. We'll talk about it maybe later on, which is about sustainability, people, communities. And we bring this also into our brand. So I mentioned Vignette Collection. One of the things we really like to do is to give people those opportunities to do a typical experience and a personalized experience. So just to give one example, the Hotel X in Brisbane, has partnered with the local school, for instance, to support people wishing to pursue a career in hospitality. There's other hotels within the chain where people can go and do some activities locally, like picking organic food and supporting local farmers and things like that. So really that kind of personalization, experience and connection with the community, I think is definitely a trend.
Patrick, that's already a lot that Willemijn is spreading over us. I'm sure you have your own view, and maybe you can add something to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably first of all, thank you for suggesting that we were from the same generation. I'm not sure if I'm flattered or humiliated, but I'm sure you're right. I think probably Kristen Setter regularly talks about what we call the golden age of travel. And I think we're all lucky enough to have kind of been born into that golden age of travel. I remember, as a younger child, people talking about a once in a lifetime trip when they retired, and people would save up and perhaps do a trip to Asia, maybe a trip to the US, perhaps go on a cruise. And it was always described as a once in a lifetime experience. I think that's changed immeasurably. I think everybody who has children, their passports are pretty full by the time they're 16, 17 years old. They've been lucky enough to travel, as we have, extensively for work, but they have from a leisure perspective. So, and whilst we've had the Great Recession, we've had the pandemic, we now have the crisis in Ukraine, I think it's not slowing down ultimately that golden age of travel. And I think as humans, we like interaction, we like traveling, we like visiting new places. And so from a hospitality perspective, the hotel business has had to respond to different travel requirements from different travelers. And I think that that's one of the exciting things about our business is it's constantly evolving and constantly changing. And much of that change comes from consumers having more knowledge, more sophistication, more requirements. I think in some respects, the hotel business occasionally is a little slow to catch on. I laughed for a long time, and some of my team always laugh at me. The chocolate on the pillow, the hotel business kept putting chocolates on the pillow for years after customers used to stack them up on the side of the bed because, they were conscious about when they would eat chocolate. But I think that's we've moved past that, and we've now recognized that it's about really recognizing what customers are looking for today and providing it in a really exciting way, whether it's about being involved in the local community or providing a raft of services that have become expected. I think most people walk into a hotel today, and certainly my kids, the first thing they do is look for the Wi-Fi password. Doesn't matter what type of hotel they're staying in, whether it's a budget hotel or a luxury hotel. And so we just need to be alive to that, and that's with all our brands. We've tried to do that and think about what is it that consumers are looking for, guests are looking for today. Not just guests traveling internationally, but also there's a huge growth in domestic travel. And I think that if nothing else, the pandemic was a huge a platform for regional hotels in many, many countries across Europe, where hotels that would perhaps struggle to encourage as many of the local or domestic travelers to come to them as they have in the past were very successful. And I think that the pandemic has been an incredible platform for regional hotels in so many parts of Europe.
Yeah, it just to build on that, it's not just indeed the pandemic is obviously has skyrocketed local travel and local awareness also of why would I need to go further away and further away when I can find things around the corner as well. But there's another trend that we can discover as well, and that we see that young professionals who are carrying a backpack basically and with a laptop in it, they want to work from anywhere. For some of my circle people that I work with in the Netherlands, for instance, they have moved for 3 months to Portugal or to even to Buenos Aires and set up camp there for a couple of months and work from there because they said, look, if I need a screen and a phone and a laptop, I can do that anywhere. And that's something also with living concepts. Prices in the big cities, London, Paris, Amsterdam, you name it, are rising so drastically that people can't afford to buy houses anymore. So new kind of living forms start taking place as well. Is that a trend also that you both see happening? And is that something also that might trigger a different way of offering in hotels? I refer to you, Patrick, when I look at Motto, for instance. Is that a target group that you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think very much so, and I think if you think about what we term as the public areas, I always laugh. We talk about food and beverage. None of our customers ever use the word food and beverage. They talk about restaurants and bars. So one of the things we have to constantly do in our business is just think about what our guests understand and what it is they're looking for. And I think, you know, we spent lots of time creating work areas in bedrooms, but the vast majority of customers tell you they want to go and sit in somewhere that's got some activity, a bar. You know, they want to be somewhere that be around people. They still want their own privacy. I notice you're both wearing headphones. I'm not, but people can put their headphones in now and they can sit in a busy bar. Noise quietening allows them to still have conversations with people without it being too disruptive. So I think there's been a huge sea change there. And it's interesting, sometimes you look at big public areas in hotels, we have to really think about changing those to be much more retail experiences, you know, not just traditional, you know, marble and lounges. It needs to be somewhere that people feel they want to be. It needs to be comfortable enough for them to sit and work, but also somewhere easy to buy a drink or a meal or a snack or whatever they want to do, and just make it space that really works for them and, really importantly, works for the owners. Because ultimately, if the spaces drive the right revenues and ultimately profitability, then owners can continue to invest in them, which ultimately will drive the success of those businesses and those hotels. And I think that's, again, thinking like retailers, thinking about how we use space and how we can create really exciting venues for guests, and Motto is one example of that. And actually the food and beverage, or as I'm doing it now, the restaurant and bar concept around Motto is to find a really good local partner, and a big chunk of the business will be local business and not just the guests staying in the hotel.
Yeah. One more question for you on this topic, Willemijn. I've noticed that what you just said is voco is one of the fastest growing hotel brands there is. I mean, voco hasn't been around very long. And what is the big success of voco in terms of growth?
You're right. It hasn't been around for a very long time. We launched it just before the pandemic, so about 3 years ago, and we created the brand. So we really created it from scratch. Versus acquisition of brands that we had done before. One of the successes, I think, we really put ourselves in the shoes of owners. So we created the brand launch team, was essentially like a small enterprise, like an entrepreneurial business within the business. They sat for months in this special room downstairs in Denham, thinking about, okay, we have this opportunity to create a brand. It's a clean sheet of paper. How are we going to go about it? We had a lot of discussion with our owners. We interviewed, we took enormous amount of feedback. And the way we created this was to think about, we had this white space in our portfolio in sort of the upscale, call it conversion segment. And we wanted to create a brand in there that could fit in easily into existing hotels, provided those hotels are of good quality and have all the facilities that you would expect for an upscale hotel, but bring a brand layer that is relatively soft. So it is really, it's not a hard standardized brand. It is, there's a layer, there's what we call the voco layer, and there's some voco identifiers and various things where clients can connect with the brand and they can see that they're in a voco hotel. But for owners, it's a very light cost of capex and it's an easy conversion cost. So it gives opportunity to join a global system quickly and at a lower capex layout. And I think that's one of the successes really of the brand, because it came at the right time with the owner mindset. It was really created with the owner mindset and starting from that point.
And I've noticed there's a difference there, because you've indeed have done quite a bit of acquisitions, Six Senses, Kimpton, you just mentioned them. Indigo is something you created yourself as well, which is another niche, which fits in very well in existing hotels. But I've noticed that there's a change in strategy. You're saying we've developed it from an owner's perspective, but this discussion is really about a consumer perspective. I understand. So you're forcing is the wrong word, I shouldn't say that, but it's you're providing a system, an experience basically that is financially very valid, and then you give customers choice. That's basically what's happening there, I guess. If I then switch to you, Patrick, if I'm not mistaken, Canopy, Curio, those kind of brands, you've created them all yourself. I've very rarely seen Hilton in the last years done acquisitions when it comes to brands. Is there a reason?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've over the years. You talked about Hilton, which was, you know, the I suppose our grandfather in the sense it's over 100 years old, but still extremely relevant today. And I think by being so close to customers, we've been able to identify what it is that customers are looking for. So each of the new brands that we've launched over the last, I guess now 15 years, have been targeted at specific customer profile customers, but also stays, the type of experience they're looking for. And the real benefit of sometimes doing that yourself is that you can really define the products in a way that complements the rest of our system, doesn't compete with it, but complements it. So, because in markets like London or Amsterdam or Paris, the big markets, that there's so much opportunity, but what we want to try and do is think about all the different guest experiences. And I think, you know, when we started growing very aggressively in Europe sort of 15 years ago, it's quite a fragmented market when you compare it to the US, where you've got, you know, 80% of hotels were branded within sort of major systems. In this market, it was significantly less. It was in the region of sort of 25 to 30%. That's now grown. I think a lot of independents have now moved into the system. But again, going back to the consumer, going back to our guests, it's about moving with guests. And I think I laugh a little at the airline industry, which is such an important partner for us. But they're a bit like hotels were 20 years ago. They really take a long time to catch up. So, for example, when you look at, I always think about the types of things that they serve customers. They're catching up and serving what customers are looking for today. 20 years ago, there was maybe 3 or 4 types of whiskies on the top shelf of any hotel bar, maybe 2 gins. We all know the brands. Now look at it today. And actually, it was some of the independents that drove that more aggressively than some of the big brands. And we've certainly caught up 8 or 9 years ago and recognized, again, customers said, I don't want to just drink the same gin that my grandparents drank, that my parents drank. They want new experiences. They want new products. And I think that's something that the hotel business is now much better at. And we work really hard, particularly around, you know, bars and restaurants, because guests don't necessarily want to drink a cup of tea out of a China cup anymore. They're really happy with a really good quality takeaway cup, provided it's recyclable, which we'll come on to, because that's something that guests are being really clear about. Their ESG expectations of hotel brands are not a nice to have, they're absolute. And I talked about this in Berlin a couple of weeks ago. And I think that's the biggest change we are seeing in today's market. And that's not just from the younger population, it's across the board. Meeting planners, you know, conference organizers, wedding planners, everybody is saying the same thing. We want to understand what you as a company, what you as a hotel are doing from an environmental, from a social, and from a governance perspective. And it's not lip service. It has to be genuine. And you know, we started on that journey aggressively back in 2008, but are constantly reinvigorating it, because it's what consumers are telling us is important to them.
Yeah. So switching to that object back to you, Willemijn. You mentioned Voco is really a darling, so to speak, for owners. The returns must be great. How do owners respond to this rigorous demand from consumers on ESG? Is that have you embedded that in the Voco strategy as well? Does that play a role?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. First of all, I agree with what has been said before. The big shift since a couple of years is that customers are demanding it. More than 80% of our customers note the importance of choosing a brand that operates responsibly, right? And people are willing to spend more for it now as well, about 30% more, according to recent studies, for a responsible hotel operating company. It's been, and in the same way as what Patrick described, it's been in IHG's DNA for a very long time. So we had this implemented, and we've been working on it for years and continuously improving. And working with various technology solutions. And as we all in the industry, I think, continue to learn more and more about the topic and how we can be more innovative and bringing it in, not only into our new hotels, but also into our existing estate. Owners have started to respond really well to it. So Berlin, it was one of the hot topics, but it didn't start in Berlin. It was already before. I was in MIPIM in Cannes last year and a couple of years before. Basically, owners are now demanding and asking, what do you do? And how can you as a hotel company help us to get our hotel to be net zero carbon? What can we do? There is a real shift in owner behavior and interest, and I see it across the spectrum, whether it's individual owners, institutional companies, because it will eventually have an impact on asset value. And people have taken consciousness of that if you don't upgrade your hotel now, you will have an obsolete hotel and you remain with a stock of obsolete hotels that will show in the valuation. In the US, it is starting to show already in the valuations, which I think is absolutely the right. I mean, it's such a positive shift that I had a feeling that a couple of years ago, we were kind of pushing it onto the owners. Now it has reversed. Owners are coming to us. They are challenging us. They say, guys, what are you doing? What can we do? How can we tackle this together? And there's such a good momentum, I think. And again, I would say we don't know everything yet. There's much more to be done and to be explored, and doing this together with our owners in partnership with certain suppliers. That's the way to move forward.
Yeah. So from my perspective, I'm obviously head of hotels for Colliers in the region, but I'm also CEO for all the other business lines of Colliers. So I run offices, I run industrial and logistics, shops, everything there. And there I see that in developments, that business is already a little bit further than hotels, where hotels actually are the example for the real estate industry, because even offices become hospitality concepts now. And you see flex coming into like 30% in the Netherlands, at least already is 30% of the workplaces is becoming flex in the next 2 years. So that is purely a hospitality concept, and that will also have its effect, in my view, on the hospitality industry. This is why I love being in the job I'm in. I get the best of both worlds. But the one of the things I wanted to ask you is, I always find that in the hotel industry, if you have a hotel of let's say 100 keys, to make the calculation easy, you have the opportunity on a maximum capacity to have 36,000, 50,000 people. If you take a 1.5 occupancy per room in a traditional bedroom, that's 50,000. Okay, let's discount it by 20%. That's 40,000 unique customers you can get in a hotel of 100 keys. So you have the opportunity to educate people as well. And it's the other way around now, that customers are trying to educate us and forcing stuff onto us. But we can have that coming back as well. Do you take that as an opportunity where you instead of doing the thing with the towels in the rooms, you hang it up, you put it on the floor, and we wash it or we don't? But can you educate people in how to use water, how to use heating, and that kind of stuff? How do you deal with that, Patrick? I see you not.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think one example of that, and just before I sort of go into that in detail, I think, we're in the business of people serving people, and we haven't really talked about it today, but an enormous part of hospitality is the teams ultimately that run our hotels. You can spend all the money in the world on the hotel, but if you don't have the right team in there greeting customers and motivated with the right culture so that they want to be there long term. And we all know the pressures that hospitality is under at the moment in terms of labour in a number of markets where therefore enough labour has been a problem. If you have the right culture and the right progression, then you can do that. And again, most of our labour in most of our hotels, most of that is local. Born, live locally. Less so in some of the resort destinations. But so you bring a lot of that alive through the teams that you have. And I think an enormous part of what we've seen, particularly with our ESG program, which is Travel with Purpose, which has been around now for probably 10 years, is they bring it alive and they're very comfortable talking to customers about it. But it's things like, for example, when you log on in our hotels now for Wi-Fi, you can log on and see how that particular hotel is doing. It's one of the links when you log on. How's it doing in terms of its water consumption and a whole host of other things? because that's what customers want, but it's also about sharing the information so people can understand it. South Africa and Cape Town in particular had a torrid time a couple of years ago in terms of water shortage. And one of the things they did very quickly was in every single public bathroom, all the sinks, they had to fit them with essentially now a mini spray tap so that the water that came out was vastly diminished. So I think it's funny, it's kind of the mother of necessity creates that kind of that entrepreneurial approach. And I think they're the sort of things that more and more we need to do in society, not just in hotels, but in society, because, and running a bath, how many customers really now run a bath and fill a bath up? And sometimes we put these baths in. We've moved more and more to showers now, and showers with heads that give a great shower experience without using as much water. That's the kind of stuff.
On that topic, I remember that the with Holiday Inn Express, Willemijn, your brand guidelines were different for the UK than they were for Europe, because in the UK people wanted baths. You see that changing now? Is there less baths in the UK, Patrick?
Well, the brand standards have changed, because now for Holiday Inn Express it's definitely showers. So a bath would be by exception. Yes.
No, it's true. It is indeed going back. I have one question from the audience for you, Patrick.
I can answer it. I saw the question pop up, and that's all around long stay. So we have long stay components in both our Hilton Garden Inn and Hampton products, which we launched earlier this year. As part of those Hilton Garden Inn and Hamptons, they've been so successful over Europe now over the last nearly 15 years that there's a demand. So there's a component of those hotels when they're developed now that you can include a longer stay component. We are looking at potentially bringing one of our long stay brands into Europe over the next 15 months. We're doing a lot of work on that at the moment. Just want to make sure we bring the right product in. And so, I think watch this space towards the end of this year. I think we'll be talking about that.
Yeah, good. Hey, looking towards the future, the next 5 years, what are the major, question for both of you, what are the three major trends going forward you see happening in the next 3 years? Willemijn?
In the next 3 years, from a development perspective, I see a couple of things. There's a lot of optimism. Three things. Yeah. Okay. There's optimism on the top line, let's call it. There's a huge confidence in the sector. I think that the sector will recover. We already see it because revenues are up. Some markets are back or nearly back to pre-pandemic levels. I say some, not all of them. And there's obviously nuances across Europe. But long-term confidence from the investor community is very positive, and the industry should be resilient. At the minute, I think we have a lot of challenges. It was spoken about in the earlier panel. Obviously, there's inflation concern. Construction costs are rising very rapidly. It's up to 30% in some markets. There's the financing challenge we still have. So it's a bit like a mix. Like the top line is positive, but then you have this underlying concern, and I think that will be a challenge in the coming years. New builds, in my mind, will be challenging in the coming years, so to say, hence all the importance also for conversion brands and looking at opportunities, how we can work with our partners on bringing existing hotels into our system, and how do we adapt our brands and all of our brands to be much more flexible in that space. So, I mentioned Voca and Vignette Collection be really thoughtful about adapting themselves to existing hotels. Having said that, we also can do it with Holiday Inn, we can do it with Holiday Inn, Crowne Plaza, basically across the brand spectrum. It's not all new build. We can also adapt ourselves to conversions, and we continuously think to how to do that, better, how to make the footprint more efficient and more optimized for our owners. And then the third one, I would say, if you say what is coming in the next 3 to 5 years, is the increase and continuation of technology. I think there's we have already seen a dramatic shift. The pandemic has been an accelerator for many topics, but I think in the space of technology, connectivity, all the virtual environments, this is a big one, and there's still a lot to do in that space, including for hospitality companies.
Yeah, Patrick, over to you. Do you see that technology also will play a big role towards the future? And the question twofold: is that more on the cost side or on the consumer experience side?
I think it's both, actually, and I think what technology allows us to do is get closer to the customer more quickly. I think everybody carries around, their third arm now is their phone. I think, I don't know what I saw something quite frightening about the number of times people look at their phones every day. But I think technology today, enhancing what we have already offered. We've got straight to room, so guests can check in before they arrive, pick their room, all that sort of good stuff. But I think being able to use and harness that technology, not to have less contact time with customers, but to have more efficient contact time with customers. Because ultimately, what we have to do is make sure everything we do is sustainable, in terms of sustainable for a customer, that they like using it, that it's easy to use, that it continually improves, but also that it's something that drives a sustainable business from the owner perspective, because it needs to work. And if it costs the earth and doesn't deliver anything, then it will soon fall over. And I think when you buy your new iPhone, that's one of the things I love about particularly Apple, is there's no instructions with it, because it's intuitive. And I think the more technology that's intuitive, I still think we have problems in technology that we have to train front desk clerks for X number of days to be able to work our systems. So I think there's a long way for us to go in terms of making our systems more intuitive, allowing us to get close to customers. But I think we're doing a really good job of moving that way. So I agree with Willemijn that that's very much going to be one of the keys. I think ESG, we've talked about, will be probably the biggest. I genuinely think but I think it's in life, not just in hotels. I think every day we're going to be, we're going to be forced. We want to think about what damage are we doing to the planet. I mean, it's no more complex than that. And I think that's something that this generation and every generation coming after us are more conscious of that, and I think more responsible. So that. And then I think probably you sort of asked a question last week. I think that there's still quite diverse portfolios across Europe. I think a lot more of the independents will look for what you might describe as a safe harbor. They've got fabulous products, but they don't necessarily haven't got visibility from a consumer perspective. So a lot of our brands were able to work with those owners, bring those hotels into our system with the requisite investment. Because again, you need to have the right quality of products for customers to want to come time and time again. So I think that will be one of the three major areas of, I guess, evolution that we'll see over the next 5 years.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much. One last question, which is relevant is coming from the audience, and that's going to be the last one before we have to break up. Vanya has, we've seen it in our screen. I think Vanya has asked us a question. She's from the Nordics, from the Baltic region, and she feels that owners there are very much behind in understanding how the importance of ESG is going to play a role towards the future. So I'm sure there's some other areas as well where obviously in Western Europe we're very much ahead, but some of the more remote and the more northern or even the more southern territories where money has a different tone because of own and private investment. What would be the solution for areas like the Balkans or the Baltics to be able to catch up on ESG towards owners? Willemijn Geels.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting because I think there's a real misunderstanding. ESG does not need to mean it's more expensive. It's about being smarter and more thoughtful. And if you're smarter and more thoughtful, it's about, not just the upfront cost. What do you spend to then run your business successfully? And I think that there's huge value. I mean, huge value, and not just to society, but to the businesses that they're operating in terms of what you buy, when you buy it, how you buy it. And I think local sourcing has become an enormous part of what we do. You don't need to ship things halfway around the world when you're building hotels. And I think the more planning and the more sophisticated the team that support you are, whether it's a local architectural team or perhaps a team that's a little further away that can bring some of that expertise from markets that may be a little ahead. I don't think necessarily that in those markets the owners are less sophisticated at all. I just think they've had less exposure to some of the evolution that we've seen in other markets.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Quite surprised. I don't think it's probably more nuanced than that, because we do quite a lot in the Balkans at the moment. We signed an intercon in Montenegro. We're doing a Crown Plaza in Albania, just to give a few examples. But I think many owners in there are very conscious and actually very much across the topic of ESG. First of all, across that part of the region, and then I think it's about continuous communication, education. just for us to continue to spread the word and making all those tools available to the owners. And as Patrick said, it is not necessarily more expensive, and it brings you huge savings in your P&L. So quite easily, I think once people understand, it's about the communication and showing the benefits of it, how it really tangibly touches the hotel. And I think people will quite easily jump on the bandwagon, to be honest.
Yeah. So big role also for you guys are already advising your customers. Big role also for advisors like Colliers and CBRE and JLL and all the others as well to help.
Yeah, and it's a big topic during the when we do technical services and we work with owners on conceiving the hotels and executing the project. It's become one of the big topics. It's not only about space optimization anymore. Yes, we can bring value engineering, space optimization. You have the whole FF&E procurement, but here's also an element where we can bring value to owners because we have a centralized knowledge and you kind of share best practices and make that available to our franchisees or our investors in a managed hotel.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
All right, I'm going to have to thank you very, very much, Patrick. A great pleasure always to have you online, and I'm sure your insights, your experience have been very, very helpful, insightful for the audience. And Willemijn, same goes for you. Your knowledge and experience has been a pleasure to listen to for everybody, I think. Marina, back to you.